Hello.
Well, hello ladies and gents, how the very devil are you? AndyManCam here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about this, the SENA 10C EVO Bluetooth intercom with integrated 4K camera. Don't think anyone needs to be getting that in their tyres. So the SENA 10C EVO is a Bluetooth 4.1 capable intercom system with an integrated 4K camera. I've been using this one for about the last year, and it was provided for me free of charge by SENA, so thanks very much to SENA for chucking that over for test. And overall, spoiler alert, I've really liked it. It's been a solid piece of kit, which has been a real pleasure to use. That's not to say there haven't been problems and niggles, but they'll come later on. So the real question is where to start. And on which function? I mean, is it a Bluetooth intercom with a camera, or is it a camera with a Bluetooth intercom? I guess some of that will depend on your opinion of how the video looks, because all of the forward-facing, helmet-mounted footage in this video is going to be coming from the 10C EVO, which I have currently set at 4K 30, which is the highest resolution that this camera is capable of. It's also capable of 1440p 30, 1080p 60, and then 1080p 30. But obviously, because we want to see the highest quality available, I've got the camera on 4K so you can get a proper good look at just how good it can be, and also how YouTube destroys the video when it gets its ugly little mitts on it. Now, from my perspective, although the video is more than usable, the quality is really pretty good. Coming from using the Sony action cams and now the Gopro action cams, I have to say I would lean towards saying that it's an intercom with a camera attached. But that is because I am a massive video geek and I like to have control of shutter speed, the ISO, white balance, all of this nonsense, which on the 10C EVO you have no control of whatsoever. You get one color profile, one brightness setting, you literally just push the button and go, that's it. The only choices you've got are the quality settings I said about earlier, but other than that, it just comes as it is. Plus, there's no stabilization of any kind in the camera. There's no optical stabilization like in the Sony X3000 action cameras, and there's no digital stabilization like in pretty much every other action camera in the world. But if all you want to be able to do is just to record your rides for a bit of a memory for yourself without having to have an extra camera on, I mean, as you can see now, no GoPro whatsoever here, so I am somewhat freed from my usual setup. And plus, for me, it's been a great backup. If ever I've had any problems with the GoPro, I can just smash the SENA on, I don't lose the trip. But yeah, for me, it's mostly an intercom, and although usable, for me the camera is secondary. So with that in mind, I'm going to let you continue to enjoy the visuals. Obviously, video is a very, very personal thing. Some people like a saturated video, some people like a flat video, some people like over-sharpened stuff. So in that respect, I will leave you to make your own mind up. Essentially, video has one glorious golden rule, which is, if it looks good, it is good. Anyway, on to the intercom side of things. Bluetooth 4.1 has a bunch of complicated specs and rules and statistics attached to it, but the bottom line is, it makes for good quality audio transmission. The first thing that really surprised me with this intercom when I very first used it for the first time with a chum was the incredible sound quality. And although this comes with a caveat because that was with the HD voice setting or HD intercom switched on, but that made the sound quality of our intercom conversation absolutely astonishing. Also, second caveat there, the likeable rider at that point had a SENA 30K, so he had the same setting turned on. Obviously, if you've got a different brand of intercom or an older SENA that doesn't have that setting available, your mileage may vary. But for us, with two SENAs, with both the settings turned on, the sound quality of our chat was basically like we were in the same room together. It was astonishing. But that, of course, does come with its own limitations, because if you have HD voice or HD intercom or whatever it happens to be called turned on, you're limited to one-to-one intercom. So that just means if you have 3 or the maximum of 4 intercom buddies on your little chat, the HD voice setting is no longer available. Which does bring me to another important point. This intercom is not mesh capable. So far, personally, I've only ever used it with 3 people at a time, but I have used it so far with 2 other SENAs. Obviously, that was no problem whatsoever. Connection is also very easy, just a quick button push and then everybody's connected. I've also used it with another SENA and a Cardo. That was an unbelievable royal ball ache. That was once again with the likeable rider and Bulldog Gaz when we were in Sauerland, and it took us about 3 or 4 hours to figure out how to connect 2 SENAs and a Cardo together, but we did get it there in the end. And despite a few hiccups at the beginning, when we finally got it working properly, the quality again was really, really good. I mean, it was Not quite to HD voice standards, but it was impressively good considering we were doing mixed brand chatting. I've also even used this intercom with 2 other Cardo users. So they had created their Cardo mesh, and then one of them dragged me into that network, and I was able to join in as well. That was a little bit more patchy. You had a lot of issues with volume, so every time I touched my volume control, it would chuck me out of the network. But I've had that before in the past with a completely different brand intercom also trying to join in with a Cardo, so I think that may be a bit of a Cardo issue. Ooh, contentious blame throwing. Now more specifically onto the features of the 10C EVO, something that it has the ability to do in conjunction with the camera, so just pulling the camera function in for a second, is that I can actually record the audio from the intercom onto the video. I've done this several times with great success. I created a dual vlog video with the Likeable Rider again on Bilsterberg track, where all of the audio for that was taken out of the SENA intercom. There's a little taster of how that sounded, so you can see dual vlogging with this camera at its most extreme.
Recording.
SENA 10C EVO is now recording audio from both of us talking at the same time, while simultaneously capturing 1080p 60 video.
Hello. Be nice if I didn't get hip cramped now on this bit.
Yeah, come on, old man River.
That's
You've not been taking
good.
your cod liver oil?
No.
Here we go. What better way to test an intercom system than on a racetrack?
There may be slightly less chit-chat in the high concentration areas. AMC's on it, he's on it. Oh, I've already got a dry mouth. Where's my drink straw?
How does my arse look in this?
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you, babe. But of course, that was sadly not without its problems. I also tried to use it to record the audio on the trip that I had, as I already mentioned, with the 2 Cardo units. That was with Matt and Mike as we went down to the Nürburgring, the Vosges Mountains and beyond. But sadly, I discovered a bit of a glitch there in that I tried to use my phone to record the audio from my pocket of the exhaust pipes because it was a horrendous, glorious cacophony of sound. But it turns out, if your phone is connected to the headset via Bluetooth and you're using an app on the phone to record audio, then the phone actually robs the audio from the headset, and then all you're left with in the camera, in the actual video itself, is the wind noise from the external microphone that's on the side of the camera. So that was a bit of a shame. I got no chat whatsoever from the other 2 guys on that session because all I had was wind noise. And to further explain the complicatedness, because I was connected to their intercoms, nightmare, because I was connected to their intercoms as a phone, my audio was being sent to their intercoms, but obviously they weren't hearing it because they weren't receiving it. It was a nightmare, but in any case, all I had was wind noise. The real sound went God knows where. Another little problem I had, which is important to know about, is that the volume of the intercom chat, the volume of the external sounds being beamed into your intercom and then recorded onto the video, are not dynamic. What that means is they don't vary in order to get a good level on the video. So if you turn the volume down on the headset, it turns the volume down of what you're hearing. So if you're chatting to somebody and they're too loud, when you turn it down, their voice then becomes quieter in relation to your voice. And furthermore, in the app, there is a setting to boost the volume. I imagine SENA have put that one together for when you've got earplugs in. If you do that, that also boosts the sound that's being recorded onto the video. If you then take your earplugs out, but don't take off the audio boost setting, you have to turn the volume way down, otherwise it blows your eardrums out. And that in turn then makes the volume of the audio that you're recording even quieter still, as I shall demonstrate in this example.
They call me Mr. Bombastic, Fantastic.
Are you listening to music or did that just pop into your head?
I don't know where that went.
As we're now doing 135 kilometers an hour on the motorway, so this will give you an idea of how good your chat may sound if you were nattering with somebody as you're blasting on the motorway down to the hills. Okay, just as a bit of an extreme test, here we are doing 175 kilometers an hour on the Autobahn, just to give you an idea of if an intercom chat would be possible when you're absolutely smashing the back doors out of the speed limit. So, yeah, how does that sound? I imagine there's probably a tiny little bit of wind. Every time. So yeah, that's the intercom pretty much squared away. I think it works really well. I've been really impressed with the audio quality, despite the few hiccups with connecting to various brands. It's always been achievable in the end with a bit of effort. But yeah, the sound's been great, the connection's been great, and it's been a pleasure to use. So with the intercom out of the way, I suppose the next important thing would be using the telephone. Obviously, speaking on your phone while you're on the bike is a distraction and it's not to be encouraged, but I did obviously try it because otherwise what kind of a test would this be? And initially, to be completely honest, I was quite disappointed. Don't turn off yet though. I was bombing up that very self-same motorway that was just on there, about the same speed, and I called the missus, and she had a real tough time hearing me. It sounded like I was in a tumble dryer in a wind tunnel. It was at that point that I actually discovered the HD voice, which has a setting which also counts for phone calls. So I switched that on, called her again, and the difference was so marked that she thought I'd actually stopped to call her. But I was in fact on the motorway again, and she said it sounded like I was at a standstill. And also, conversely, I could hear her. Battery's died. Right then, try again. SENA do tell you that you can get an hour and a half of recording time with the camera, but that is very much ideal scenario, lowest quality settings, because what the GoPro was on, well, it was on 26 minutes, I think, when the camera battery died. So yeah, on the subject of battery life, SENA tell you that you'll get 20 hours of intercom time with the 10C EVO. To be honest, I haven't really experienced anything to completely disprove that. I couldn't honestly tell you exactly how many hours I've used it for, but I have used it already for 2 days on the trot while chatting with somebody without charging in the evening. So although I can't confirm 20 hours, I can say that the battery is more than usable and it can easily last through an entire day of riding. But yeah, that does give me the opportunity to show you another feature, which is that you can actually run the intercom and the camera from a battery pack using the little cable that's tucked in the back there. It's a micro USB connection, and the cable is a right angle one, which is nice because it means that it runs down away from the helmet rather than having a cable sticking up like an antenna. Although I think it's a very strange location there. They've put the socket on the top of the camera and it's sealed off just with a little rubber flappy bung thing, which means to me if ever I don't close that flap properly, or if I nudge it open while I'm messing around with the phone button, which is also at the back there, I could potentially leave the whole unit open to water damage, which would be less than ideal. But in a year of use, that hasn't happened. It's just something to think about. So while we're on the subject of the phone button and the other buttons, using the intercom has also been mostly a real pleasure. The big jog dial on the side is an absolute wonder. It's easy to find, it's easy to use. Changing the volume and things is just super easy. It's made slightly harder by having that cable in the way now, but yeah, that's the maximum volume when it beeps. It would be nice if there was a little bit of a beep, beep, beep kind of a feedback thing when you're changing the volume, because all you get is one beep at maximum volume and then another beep at minimum volume. Oh, I think it was there, but I didn't hear it because it's at minimum volume. But also the fact that that jog dial is 3-directional is a real win, because it's also a push button. I did have a bit of a brain fart few moments of idiocy where I thought that there was a push button in the middle of it and the jog dial was separate. So I was constantly trying to push the button and then spin the dial. But then I eventually found out they are one and the same, and you can just push anywhere on the dial and then rotate it to get various functions. Like for example, when you're listening to music, you can push the dial to start, push and rotate backwards to skip a song, push, rotate forwards to go backwards for a song, and then push and hold to stop it. So yeah, once I'd got hold of that fact that it is much more simple than I thought it was, using the thing became far easier. The camera button on the top is very small, and in these thick gloves, not so easy to find, but again, not impossible. And this single button has several functions, because to turn the camera on, you just push it once. The SENA tells you that the camera is on.
Camera on.
Push and hold it to record a video. SENA tells you that the video is recording.
Recording.
Or push it once to snap a photo. The only time it gets a little bit more complicated with the camera is when you want to turn the camera off, because you have to hold down the camera button on the top and then touch the phone bottom at the back, and that turns the camera off.
Camera off.
So then there's the phone button at the back, which is another tiny little button which now is almost impossible to reach because of the cable in the way, but normally that is far easier to find. Obviously the antenna thing here, the little shark fin jobby, gives you a nice orientation point for where your buttons and things are. And the phone button, again, just like the camera button, has several different functions with speed dials and answering calls. But that's another thing which, to be honest, I haven't really used very much. I don't tend to call people when I'm riding. I've just accepted the odd call, which if you have the settings set up in the app, you can actually just say a word loudly and it'll answer the call. So that's very easy. Otherwise, I think you can press any button and it'll answer. And then the final kind of little fiddly button functiony thing is the memory card slot, which is in the bottom of the unit, into which you put your SD card to record your videos onto. And they have to be a U3 high-speed SDXC card, otherwise it's going to struggle with the 4K videos. I have found you can use some slower cards if you only want to record the 1080-30 videos, but the higher quality you want to go to, the better memory card you're going to need so it doesn't stumble over itself. What else is there about the 10C EVO that I can tell you? Running back round again and meeting myself at the rear end, who misses. Come back to the sound quality. I was very impressed with that as well through the headphones, the speakers that are in this. They were a noticeable step up from the Interphone Tour that I had before this. Although SENA have now released HD speakers, which are a lot larger, allegedly a lot more high quality. Cost a bit more money, but of course there is somewhere to go for an upgrade if you want even better sound. I think that was definitely an answer to Cardo's JBL speakers. What else is there to talk about? Setting up the thing was very easy. Literally a case of taking all the liners out of the helmet, smashing the speakers and the microphone into their respective places, either using the tiny little wired microphone or the boom microphone, depending on your personal tastes and also what kind of helmet you've got, and then choosing one of 3 completely different mounting options for the actual intercom unit itself. 2 of them have like a blade which goes up between the EPS liner and the outer shell of the helmet, and then there's a screw down clamp which clamps it around on the outside to give you a nice firm fix. One of those is a fixed unit which then allows you to fit the intercom onto it, although you have a slight bit of adjustment with that by changing the internals, and you can actually rotate that by a few degrees in either direction to customize your fit and the angle, because obviously with this, unlike normal intercoms, the angle you fit it at is far more important because you need the camera pointing in the right direction. The second one has the same blade that goes inside the helmet, clamp on the outside, and this is actually the one that I've got fitted right now. It has a rotatable screw tightened piece which allows you to rotate the camera through a multitude of different angles, giving you far more flexibility. It also sets the camera a bit further out from the helmet, which, although that does mean you're going to get slightly more wind resistance on the one side of your head, but visually for the camera, that means that you're going to be getting a lot less helmet in the shot. Finally, the last option is the lightest, the lowest profile, and that's a sticky pad that just sticks on the outside of the helmet with no metalwork, no clamps on the helmet at all, and barely anything sticking out, and that gives you the lowest profile fitting as well. And while on the subject of the different mounts and the different mics, here's a little bit of a geeky section for you. Whenever you look for the weights of these things, and obviously the weight of these things that we're strapping onto our helmets is quite important. I mean, for me particularly, I find I get a very sore neck if I've got too much nonsense attached to my head. So the weights of intercoms, when you look at them on the manufacturer's websites, they almost always seem to only give you the weight of the unit itself, which I think is very misleading because there's a lot of other stuff that you don't see. So for the geeks among you out there that want to see exactly how everything weighs, here is the setup with the lightest possible options, so the wired mic, the stick-on pad, and here is the setup with the heaviest possible options, so the boom mic and this rotatable mount that I've got on right now. As you can see, there's quite a difference, and they're both a little bit more than SENA tell you the weight of the intercom actually is. Although I can confirm, having just got hold of one, that this intercom in the lightest possible setup is exactly the same weight as the Cardo Pack Talk Slim in its lightest form. Oh, people are really using the opportunity. This is the first sunny day, by the way. We've got 15, 16 degrees today. Last week it was below freezing the entire week. So I guess we come onto the camera to finish. The camera, as already explained, is... I just waved at a cyclist. I'm so excited just to be out. Yeah, the camera is a 4K capable camera up to 30 frames per second. It has a field of view of 120 degrees, which, although it may seem quite low, in this usage scenario, I think is definitely the best spec to have. Because if this camera had the field of view of a GoPro, so 150 to 170 degrees, depending on your model and what setting you've got, then this video, like all bad pornos, would be 40 to 50% helmet. Whereas with the narrower field of view, we're looking past the helmet, there's a little bit in the shot, but not enough to really spoil it. The camera uses the intercom's built-in battery, so obviously that means once the battery has died, you can't then swap the batteries out. And once the camera's killed the battery, that means also the intercom has no battery either. But obviously, of course, as we've already seen, you can power it by a USB power bank. And the camera itself, because obviously it's going to need to be mounted on several different helmet types, helmet styles, people that have their head down, people that have their head up, helmets that are super curved, helmets that are flat at the sides. It has a lot of adjustment available in order to counteract that. And obviously the choices of the mount that you use drive how much upwards and downwards rotation you can have, but as well as that, there's a little knob on the front of the camera which allows you to rotate the lens and the sensor through a 30-degree arc in order to level your video as much as possible. It's a really nice little touch, really simple, very effective in use. The only slight problem I found with it is that sometimes when I'm cleaning the lens off with my fingertip, I've accidentally nudged that little knobble, and obviously there's no way to tell that you've done that until you look at the video later and see that suddenly everything's like this. But again, that hasn't happened very often. The battery, as you've already seen, really doesn't last very long at all. Even on 1080p, I've only managed to get a maximum of an hour of video recorded, and obviously that does then mean that your chat time on the intercom is greatly reduced as well. So for all-day recording, it's vital that you have the battery pack and the USB cable in order to keep the show running. I mean, if you're just out and about with the intercom and you want to record something quickly for 5 minutes, that's great. You're not going to kill that much battery. But if you want to get a long session, you have to have the power bank. But I think for most people, this camera is really intended just to catch those odd moments, those little awesome sections of great road on the longer rides. But on a little bit of a side note, one other bonus that I have found, a positive byproduct of that issue with the phone robbing the audio away, is that when you've got the intercom on but the camera turned off, you can still record the audio onto your phone using any audio recording app. I just use the voice notes app, which comes already installed on the iPhone. So even if I don't want to catch the video because I'm using a GoPro at the time, that allows me to record all of the audio at very high quality onto my phone through the intercom. And again, this is something that I've tried on both Cardo intercoms and Interphone intercoms, and the audio quality coming through that Bluetooth connection into the phone on this 10C EVO is head and shoulders above both of them. So what else is there to talk about with the camera? Yeah, it records onto a micro SD card. Obviously, as I said, that has to be a U3 card. I'm currently using a SanDisk EVO Select 128GB card, and I mostly have had no trouble with it, but I did have an issue once or twice where, after formatting the card in the app, the SENA told me that the card had been formatted.
Format SD card completed.
And then immediately after, told me that the memory card was now full. And once this has happened, the only way to fix it is to put the memory card into a computer and format it there, and then try again. That's now happened twice, which on one occasion was a real pain in the arse because I was out in the middle of nowhere. Obviously I didn't have my laptop with me, and I just had to put another memory card in because the first one, although completely empty, was for some reason jiggered and wouldn't work. Once I got it home, formatted it on the laptop, it then worked again fine. But speaking of apps, just so you know fully what you're getting yourself into here, when you get the 10C EVO, don't be thinking that you can do everything in one app, because I'm afraid that's just not the case. There is one app to use the intercom and to change the settings there, like all the audio settings, change your radio presets, all that stuff. And there's a completely separate app that you need to get in order to control the camera. But yeah, once in the app, there's a few settings in there. You can change the quality, you can check the framing of your shot, you can watch the videos you've recorded before, and you can stop and start video. So yeah, it's quite simple, seems to work pretty well. Charging the unit, I'm afraid, I'm quite embarrassed to say, I don't really know how long it takes to charge. I normally just plug it in until it's charged. I mean, it shows a red light when it's charging, shows a blue light when it is charged. I think it normally takes about 2 hours to charge from empty to full. Although quite often, because of using the battery packs while I'm using it, I tend to finish rides with the battery pretty full anyway. But yeah, I guess the important thing to take away here is that I haven't ever had any real problems with not being able to charge it fast enough when I'm on tour. So what else is there? It's always the challenge. I was actually originally planning to do this video once again on my sofa, but with weather like this, how could I not come out and enjoy a ride? Particularly as I think those of you in the UK who have been locked down for so long would probably appreciate a bike-based review far more than a sofa-based one. Because let's be honest, we've all had enough of the sofas lately. But yeah, because of that, I'm always at a bit of a danger of forgetting what I have or haven't spoken about. I think I've covered everything that I can. Obviously, there's a lot of features that I'm sure some of you would like to hear about, but to be honest, I just don't use them. Like, to be honest, I never connect my sat-nav up to the intercom. I just find it too distracting, and obviously because I'm always blathering at the camera, if I'm interrupted by Frau Garmin screaming in my ear, it kind of ruins the flow a bit. I do listen to music, actually. That's something I haven't talked about. I mean, I already said that the quality is very good. I also never listen to the radio, so I haven't done anything with messing around with presets or changing between channels and that kind of stuff. And because of not using these functions, I also haven't tried out the audio multitasking feature of this intercom, which is a feature that allows you to have several sound sources all playing at the same time, but with volume being changed based upon the priority that you can set in the app, is my assumption, because as I said, I haven't used it. There are also, of course, other features with the camera that I haven't used. Like, for example, you can do loop recording and you can do highlight tagging. Again, something I'm afraid I haven't tried out. So sadly, I can't tell you if they work or not. So to be honest, I think that pretty much brings us to the end. That is the entirety of my thoughts and experiences with the SENA 10C EVO. And yeah, to summarize, like I said at the beginning, I've really enjoyed using it. It's an extremely usable, extremely useful bit of kit, which has worked really well, to be fair. I mean, everything with Bluetooth seems to have its niggles and its problems, but all of the problems and the issues with this unit have been relatively easily overcome. And bottom line, using it as an intercom with the ability to record the odd video, it has been absolutely perfect. Obviously, when it comes to the price of the thing, whether or not you find that acceptable comes down to how important to you the camera is, because in terms of the intercom itself, the unit built into this is essentially, as far as I'm aware, based on the feature set, an SMH10. So because of the lack of the mesh intercom capability, the intercom itself isn't exactly cutting edge. Obviously, having a camera attached to it is going to put the price up, and then if the camera is important to you, that makes the price worthwhile. So yeah, that is the end of my review of the SENA 10C EVO. Thank you so very much for watching. If this video has been interesting to you or useful in any way, give it a big fat thumbs up. If it hasn't, give it a thumbs down, but either way, tell me what you thought was good or bad about it in the comments, and I will do my very best to get back to you. Any other questions you may have about the intercom that weren't answered in this video, I will do my very best to answer. If you've come along to this video purely to see the review, why not drop yourself over to the channel? There are a lot more videos like this on AndyManCam, as well as touring videos, garage videos, installation videos, you name it. If it's about bikes, there'll be something to do with it on there. Well, except maybe motocrossing. Haven't had a chance to try that yet. Well up for it though. So I'm going to head on home because sadly too many appointments to enjoy the rest of this beautiful sunny day, but hopefully I will be out very soon, and I'll see you again next time. In the meantime, keep yours shiny, and I'll see you out there. Ta-ra!
Goodbye.